Hello, everyone, and welcome to Design Meets Sustainable Design, designing for tomorrow, today. I'm not sure if any of you have attended a Design Meets, but we have been running these since 2010 as a community platform for exchanging ideas, getting inspired, collaborating with our peers to find more meaningful ways to put design and its transformative power to work. We've hosted events recently on AI and governance and ethics, circular economy and circular design, design fiction, why graphic culture matters, life-centered design, and women's health and healthcare resiliency. My name is Ian Chalmers. I'm the Creative and Design Director with Pivot Design Group, Arctic Group, and founder of Design Meets. So what does sustainable design mean? And how can it be applied to the field of visual design, graphic design, communications, UX design, to name a few? How can designers and creatives integrate a new way of thinking and processes to reduce environmental impacts while maximizing positive social impacts through a more thoughtful design process and design choices? We all know user-centered design and human-centered design, and now we have humanity-centered design. We have circular economy and circular design, biophilic design. Recently, one of my favorites, life-centered design, systems and systemic and service design. There are plenty, but these are all super essential and ways of us to process and design. But we humans are also part of the problem and shouldn't always be at the center of this thinking. This event on sustainable design aims to help us better understand why and how sustainable design is crucial to the future of design practice and how to integrate it creatively into our design processes. Speakers. Oh, that was a fun slide. Anyway, we're very fortunate today to have three speakers who are practicing sustainable design. They are Taylor Kaus, Kaylyn Belcourt, and Benedetta Crippa. Our format for each speaker will be 10 minutes. At the end of the three talks, we'll follow up with a short Q&A. And if we can't get to your question today, our speakers are committed to answering them post-event, where we will also have a recording and a summary of what we learned and ways that we can, what our path looks like forward together, actionable insights. Up first, let's get started. We have Taylor Kaus. I'm just going to read your bio, Taylor. I know not everyone loves hearing their bio read out loud, but I'm going to do it anyway. Taylor is a UX designer with a background in sociology, climate change, and design. She brings a life-centered approach to her work, creating sustainable web design solutions that address social and environmental challenges. Taylor is dedicated to using design as a tool for meaningful change. She has worked with startups, nonprofits, and the private sector across the US and Europe. Outside of work, Taylor enjoys exploring the mountains and coastlines of New England, where she recently relocated with her family. Taylor, over to you.
Hey, thank you.
Now the fun part.
Share my screen.
Perfect.
All right, great. So thank you, Ian, for the introduction and for having me. As Ian mentioned, I currently work as a freelancer with Greenpeace International and also as a fellow at the Life-Centered Design School. With my background in sociology, climate change, and design, I tried to really merge the three of these fields, and I became a UX designer because I wanted to create experiences that could inspire action and bring about change on social and environmental issues. So today I'll be sharing a little bit about my role as a UX designer and researcher. And I will be talking about how I integrate life-centered design principles into my work. I'll briefly highlight a project I've been working on with Greenpeace International, and I'll offer some ideas and questions that you might find useful in your own practice. So in my work, I follow a life-centered design approach. This is a philosophy that asks us to think beyond humans as the sole users of our designs Instead, it considers all life forms and ecosystems impacted by what we design. So plants, animals, minerals, entire communities. For me, this is about questioning every aspect of design right from the start. So a practice that goes beyond reducing environmental impact. It's also about examining every step of the process through a holistic lens. So the questions that I ask are, who is impacted by my work? How does our design affect not only people, but also ecosystems and the natural systems that support us all? It isn't just about how we design, it's about why we design in the first place. It's about considering the long-term effects of our choices and how this impacts the environment. It's about rethinking our digital carbon footprint and understanding the energy consumption of our sites. And critically, it's also about acknowledging who bears the true cost of that consumption, whether that's communities, ecosystems, or future generations. So while there are a lot of aspects of this to talk about, today I'm going to talk about one in particular, the concept of personas and specifically non-human personas and how to incorporate this into your work. If you're not familiar, personas are a character or a depiction of a human, oftentimes, that represents your audience. Personas are useful in UX design because they help teams to emphasize with them, understand users' motivations, to guide design decisions that are more likely to meet your users' needs. And then we have non-human personas. So these extend beyond the traditional idea of personas, which typically represent human users, to include those non-human entities. Again, the plants, the animals, ecosystems, environments, communities, and beyond, to really think about what is it that they need? What do they want? What are their motivations? What are their goals? And this approach helps us to make more mindful choices that prioritize the well-being of the environment and all forms of life, encouraging more sustainable decision-making. This mindset shifts from thinking about value for the end user and shareholder towards adding value for nature and communities as well. So for a project that I worked on with Greenpeace International for the Planet 4 product, this is an open source digital engagement and website builder that is used across 50 Greenpeace websites. I created a non-human persona. So this process included a lot of brainstorming and co-design sessions to really understand what non-humans were impacted by our work. So we ultimately decided to focus on water as a key stakeholder in design decision-making. And here's an example of the water persona visual. I also created an audio to give water a voice. And while we don't have enough time to listen to that in its entirety today, I will play a short excerpt. And if you would like to listen to the whole thing in the future, we will be sharing an article in the next few weeks on our Planet 4 Medium page with that full audio. But here on the slide, we have the visual. And while this is a helpful reference point, it doesn't get as deep as the audio. The audio really gives a voice to water and allows us to connect with it in a new way. So while the visual is still a useful tool, the audio is really where the heavy work took place and where you can really start to feel like water has a voice, like other human users. So I'm going to just go ahead and play maybe a minute or so of that recording.
I am water. I have a history dating back to the very beginnings of our planet. I sustain life, and life lives within me. I am powerful. I can move mountains, store energy, and dissolve nutrients. I am the ocean, the rivers, the lakes, the ponds, the puddles, the glacial ice, the snowfall, and more than 60% of you. While I am essential for life, I do not need you as you need me. Since 1950, global water use has nearly tripled, and while the amount of water we have on Earth today is about the same as it was over 5 billion years ago, some things have changed. Climate change, deforestation, agriculture, industry, over-extraction, development, increased demand, and more threaten my supply of usable and accessible water. And while the Earth may never run out of me, my freshwater supply may run out for you. While I'll exist in one form or another, how you use me and what you do to me have impacts on you.
All right, I will stop it right there for now, but we continue on with more input from water on the overuse, especially as it relates to its use in cooling data storage centers. Billions of gallons of water billions of liters of water are used to cool data storage centers every year. And this is where our direct connection came to this persona and to the work that we do. So now this persona is a tool that can help us empathize with water and consider how every decision we make has a real impact, whether that's positive or negative. It can help us to make decisions that are better for the planet, whether that means redesigning in a less carbon intensive and therefore water intensive way, or whether that means reexamining what we create in the first place. It gives us a basis to really consider what we are doing and how. So I think one of the best places to start when thinking about incorporating a more sustainable approach to design is to start by asking questions. So questioning every aspect of the process, asking yourself who and what will be impacted by your design decisions, considering the how and the why behind your choices. How can your design reduce harm and even create positive impacts? What are the environmental and social implications of your work? And from there, you can start to map out your stakeholders, those human and non-human entities who are affected by your designs. Once you've identified these users, explore how your design can support or minimize negative impacts on them. Then you can start to take some actionable steps and start considering how you would assess impact. Maybe that's looking at your carbon footprint or doing a sustainability audit of your site. You can rethink the digital carbon footprint and energy consumption of your designs from coding to hosting. You can look at areas where you can optimize for efficiency, reduce waste, and make more mindful choices. And consider accessibility and inclusivity, ensuring that your design supports diverse communities and the natural world as well. By embedding these questions into your practice, you can make more thoughtful, impactful design decisions that align with sustainable and life-centered principles. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions or you want to chat about any of this further or just want to connect, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I put the hyperlink there. So thank you very much. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor. That was great. Love the audio piece. Wonderful way to communicate a non-human persona aspect of the work that we're doing. Excellent. Up next is Kaylyn Belcourt. Kaylyn, I'm going to give you a little intro here. Kaylyn is the president of Copernicus Educational Products, where they strive to use business as a force for good while designing and manufacturing innovative classroom solutions. Kaylyn has a Bachelor of Industrial Design and an MBA specializing in innovation leadership. She leads the Toronto chapter of Climate Designers, a group focused on using their design skills to work on climate action, and sits on boards of ACEDO and DIAC, which are both, lots of acronyms here, industrial design associations. Over to you, Kaylyn. You can unpack that a little bit more in your piece. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and be a part of this discussion today. So as Ian said, I am an industrial designer, and I'm currently running a company called Copernicus Educational Products, based in Ontario. We're a designer and manufacturer of school furniture and equipment, and we've been a B Corp since 2018, although the company has been around for over 35 years. I also run the Toronto chapter of Climate Designers, and that chapter just started up last year. Today, I'd love to share with you about how climate designers can help you along your career path and get started on working in climate, and also about how that intersects with my work at Copernicus. So if you've never heard of Climate Designers before, I thought I would start with what that organization is all about. Climate Designers was founded in October of 2019, and we are a hub for designers and creative professionals from all industries committed to using our creative skills for climate action. I was introduced to Climate Designers when I was accepted to be a participant in Project Blue Sky in 2023. Project Blue Sky is a program run by climate designers and meant to teach designers new skills while working on a climate positive project in a community. Myself, along with a group of about 12 other designers from all different disciplines, camped out in the California desert, ideating on ways to highlight critical water issues in the area. The QR code here links to a short video about our Project Blue Sky experience if you're interested in finding out more about the program or applying yourself, which I would highly recommend. The program focused on methodologies and ways to think wrong or in other words, to go against the status quo so that you can stand out. In a busy world, thinking wrong can help tell your story in a different way. These practices can be applied to any design discipline and work, climate-focused or not, but our focus was on the local water issue. As a multidisciplinary team, we put into practice various exercises and came up with very wrong ideas to help the issue go viral, like organizing a dry water slide or water park for a day to highlight the issue, or guerrilla marketing tactics to execute in local grocery stores throughout the state to make people aware of Big Carrot, who was stealing all the water and suing the town's residents. Ultimately, my group landed on a concept that I would never have expected to work on in my career, and one we likely would not have come up with outside of this process of thinking wrong. That, plus it being more media-based than my typical work, pushed me in new directions and ways of thinking. We pitched to an edgy water company a campaign called the Mother Suckers, highlighting the sinister practices of big ag in the region and donating a percentage of sales to a local legal defense fund for the community. We developed a very quick, down and dirty prototype of a video that we could envision Liquid Death running. In the spirit of sharing your work, I am linking to the unlisted video here, but if you choose to watch it, please remember that this is a prototype. Most of us had no video experience at all, and we did it in just one day. At the end of the week, I walked away reinvigorated with a different outlook and with a wealth of new connections. Working with other design disciplines was a big part of that. I was also thinking more about the stories we tell in design through our choices and our messaging. So I came home and I wanted to start the first Canadian chapter of Climate Designers and did so in Toronto. As an organization, Climate Designers' mission is to empower designers to learn, connect, and act on climate solutions. Our vision is to activate the global design community to co-create a just and regenerative world. We believe that knowledge and community together are what catalyze action. Our goal as a chapter, as well as a goal for the larger organization, is to build a movement that will fundamentally shift the design industry. You might ask, why a climate group for designers? Because designers have the skills needed to facilitate the kind of system-level, innovative change that we need to see in businesses, and they're found in every industry around the globe. At Climate Designers, we empower designers of all kinds to utilize their skills for positive change while building satisfying careers that make an impact on our climate crisis. Equipped with the network, support, and resources that we provide, climate designers can become the innovators, leaders, and effective activists needed in this moment. We want every designer to ultimately see themselves as a climate designer. And we have lots of designers in our community. We're made up of all different design and creative professionals from around the world. Getting the chance to learn alongside and interact with these other design disciplines opens up new avenues and new ways of thinking, I have found. The belief that designers have agency and influence to build a better future is a practice in my daily work at Copernicus, where we have a team of 6 industrial designers and 2 marketers, all increasingly using their skills in this way. So I thought I would briefly share 3 areas in which we've evolved as a company on this journey to help give you ways to look at your own practice. When we first set some goals to reduce our overall impact as a business, there was a lot of learning. We looked to programs like Green Economy Canada's Net Zero Pathways pilot project for small and medium enterprises in manufacturing to help us assess our current footprint and make a plan to reduce it. And we found that there was not many great tools to help our design team make informed decisions or measure their choices. So we built our own calculators and assessments to use alongside of existing tools that we could find. We also went through a review of all of our processes to add in different considerations to a project, like to set a carbon target for a given item or review new materials on criteria aside from just cost. So questions I would encourage you to ask yourself. Can a partner help accelerate your progress, even if you typically don't partner with others, or can it help you chart a path? What tools can you use? And if they don't exist, can you build them yourself? One of our best-selling products, considered command central of many elementary classrooms, has traditionally been made like this, out of bent steel, tubing, and injection molded plastic. And while many competitors in the education industry make their products out of wood, like Baltic birch or maple, we decided to pursue a change to make our popular products out of bamboo, a more rapidly renewable material. Redesigning the same easel in bamboo versus its original construction reduced its carbon footprint by 32%, which set us on a journey to redesign everything we make out of new materials and change. And using more and more bamboo has also allowed us to expand our product line into areas that we traditionally did not play in, changing again. Early childhood typically chooses wood, and now we have an option, which is also pushing us to again further look at replacing more materials, like the plastics in our tub, with felted options. We've had to change our manufacturing facility, learn new skills, and change the way we design. We're all about change, and nothing can stay the same. Next, we're actually exploring ways to change our business model and are experimenting with take-back programs for end of life and using waste as a material. Last year, we paused all development to let our team explore materials that come from waste products and consider whether we could use them in our own product line. Ultimately, that has resulted in us pursuing the development of our own material, which I wish I could share more about, but it's just a little too early to do so. So questions to ask yourself about how you can change. Can you make a change to your materials or methods to be more sustainable? And I think this should be about progress and not perfection. Don't let perfection stall you from making any effort. And what needs to change about your business model, and what levers can you pull to influence new behaviors or ways of being? We also believe that business has a large role to play in correcting our mistakes of the past, building a better future, and redefining what legacy is to focus on people and planet and not just profits. And I think it's important that we match our actions to our words and put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. So at Copernicus, we donate a minimum of 1% of our sales to social and environmental causes we believe in. We focus our contributions in the areas of environmental conservation, environmental education, and community initiatives. And last year, we were able to contribute over $270,000 towards these causes. This year, we're focused on turning one of our properties, seen here in Arthur, where we're located, into a forest school that we are going to staff by an early childhood educator and offer for free to the local community. In our marketing plans, we promote the idea that business can give back, and we hope to influence others to take even just small actions. We're also finding ways to get more comfortable using our business voice as an advocate for change. In 2022, we organized a campaign to get businesses to sign a letter to Premier Ford to put pressure on him to reverse his controversial Greenbelt decision. After we were able to get 120 Ontario businesses to sign on, we like to feel like we played a small part in putting pressure on the government. So questions to ask yourself about your messaging and your impact. What's the story you have to tell? What does legacy mean to you? And how are you using your voice as an individual or at work or as a business? We're far from reaching all of our goals at Copernicus, and we've had our fair share of missteps and missed deadlines around goals we've set for ourselves, and nothing is perfect. But I'm happy that we're making progress every day. So I wanted to leave you all with this quote that was shared with the Climate Designers team last week when many people in our community were feeling particularly discouraged by the events in the US. And that is this quote from Joe Strummer of The Clash. The future is unwritten, and we, all of us, will be the authors of that future. So I would encourage you to check out Climate Designers and join a hub or a chapter in your area if you're interested. They're all over the world. Our chapter events include things like speakers and workshops. Most recently, we did a session at Design With, where we discussed circularity, materials, and waste, and participants could make their own pouch. And coming up in December, we'll have an event at Arcadia Earth with a discussion following around storytelling and design. Every time our Toronto chapter meets, I am re-energized by the kind, thoughtful, and innovative people in Ontario who are truly interested in and are trying to help create a better future. Please join us, or feel free to follow our chapter on Instagram to hear about our events.
Wow, amazing, Kaylyn. That's so much you have going on there. That's very inspiring from a business point of view. And the Climate Designers is such a great gathering for designers to get together with others. So you're not, in isolation trying to figure out how to be a better designer or be a sustainable designer. Thinking wrong. Love that. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All in 10 minutes too. Amazing. That's the challenge, the ultimate challenge. All right, up next is Benedetta Crippa. Benedetta is a graphic designer and educator who runs her own studio practice in Stockholm, Sweden. With over 15 years of engagement with the social equity sector, Her practice-based research on visual sustainability is credited with bringing a fresh contribution to the discourse on sustainable practice in graphic design, and has been highlighted in publications by EGA and the MIT Press, amongst others. An ornamentalist, engaging speaker, and educator, Benedetta advocates for the evolved design field grounded in the transformative power of aesthetics. So very curious to hear from Benedetta today, and over to you.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. Thank you, Ian. Great to be here. Happy to represent Europe tonight.
Nice.
You see my slide, I guess. Yes.
We do. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I will, as Ian has mentioned, I'm a graphic designer, and it's very dark here because I'm in Sweden. It's quite late here. Not too late, but I'll dig right in. So a few years ago, I was working at the Stockholm Environment Institute, where I was a graphic designer for about 4 years. And I had a client there who wanted a business card, and I showed them two options. So one with a red background and one with a white background. And the client said, you know, I love the red one. It's perfect for us, but I think we should print the white one because white saves ink and it's more sustainable. Now, something about this answer did not feel right to me, but I could really not say why. So I went home, I thought about it, and I realized that my client at some point had learned two things. One, to put aside their preferences and emotions in favor of some idea of sustainability, and two, that idea of sustainability included that color is unsustainable. And I was quite worried about both, and I asked myself, okay, what should I respond? So this got me thinking, and I started to notice how all around us, people or clients would say things like, let's not print, let's go digital for the sake of sustainability. Other times they would say, let's print in black and white. But sometimes they would even say, let's not design at all. And a few months later, I see this image. It was published by the New York division of AIGA, the American National Association for Design, during the Black Lives Matter demonstrations in 2020. As you can see, it comes straight from the board of directors, and their message is very simple. Do not make a poster, donate, and educate. So in other words, don't design. Design is not going to solve any of our big problems. Real knowledge and real education sits somewhere else. And this is the example of a famous European design studio. I'm not going to focus on their name, but is one that has achieved international recognition, that released their new website a couple of years ago. So they wanted a sustainable website, and their response was to release a website, as you see, without any images, in black and white, so again, no color, using only the typefaces Arial and Times New Roman that, since they're installed on every computer in the world, they don't require to be downloaded from a server and so on. And this is the page they published to explain the concept, but the whole website looks pretty much like this. Now, imagine for a moment this solution on a global scale, right? Imagine that our whole world should look like this to be sustainable. It's not particularly exciting, I would say, and it also begs the question, what is design about? So we have established this idea that design is by nature unsustainable. Many of you are probably scared or resistant to talk about sustainability because somewhere you got the message that no matter what you do, your design contributes to make the world a worse place. And that's a pretty tough feeling to live with. And you may feel a little paralyzed right now. So to respond to this state of things, I started to carry out this research and give this talk, which is usually also much longer. And I'm going to tell you how I think we need to reframe this problem. So I realized that discussions about sustainability never included considerations about beauty, about aesthetics, and how they can contribute to the world that we want. So I started to work on the concept of visual sustainability, which includes the visual aspects of design and how they can contribute to the future as we want it. And it was a bit of a lonely journey because surprisingly, there is very little research or discourse on this, but I'm happy to say that it's actually getting traction. So we must remember that growing up, we learned two languages, the verbal, we all know about that, and the visual one. And the verbal is obviously vastly different depending on location. The visual one can also vary slightly depending on your place in the world, but most of it's a language that we share and we use to make decisions. So if I ask you, for example, between these alternatives I'm going to show you instinctively without thinking, who do you ask to design your website? Or which chair do you choose for your office? Or which typeface do you choose to ask for a raise? You can see how we are all trained to make a vast amount of decisions only on the basis of how things look like, even when we do not have any other information. And this defines a series of relationships between human beings and between human beings and the ecosystems that we inhabit. Every day someone is killed just for looking like me are the words of designer Shesa Garbut commenting in the wake of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations in 2020, more or less at the same time of the image published by AIGA, ironically. So the language of looking like here is central, and I want you to focus on that. Because when it comes to visual culture, we all exist in this cycle. We come with a certain visual baggage, a visual vocabulary growing up, that it's going to define who has authority. That is going to define who has power. And that defines who exploits and who is going to exploit, which in turn also affects our visual vocabulary, right? So it's a cycle. And as a graphic designer, when it comes to what kind of world I want to contribute to, it is also and especially on the visual qualities that I have to act upon and that I can act upon, on the visual literacy that I contribute to. So what I propose is that we cannot really expect to revisit patterns of exploitation without addressing the visual literacy that we create collectively and the hierarchies that are created there. And this is an exercise that I do with my students. I give a course about this in Sweden once a year, when we try to make clear links between the way things look like today and the main structures of power that dominate our society. And at first, the students are entirely puzzled by this question, and they cannot find one single thing until after about an hour and a little bit of talking together, it looks like this. So it goes from everything like good design being equated with minimalistic, or pink not being a serious color, or band-aids coming only in the Caucasian skin color, to the world map having Europe at the center, and all of that. So if you pick just one of these to unpack and work with, you can actually be busy for a lifetime. So there's lots and lots to do. But when it comes to the question of how can visual work be sustainable, how can graphic design be sustainable, or visual communication be sustainable, these are some of the answers we have come up with so far. Since our industry is traditionally connected to print, many answers are about print production. And for digital design, the field is thinking about this type of criteria. And you will notice that none of the solutions listed here has anything to do with aesthetic considerations, which are, after all, the most visible in a design and are also the ones that hopefully we are trained for. So other considerations may impact aesthetic choices, but the visual component of the design is very rarely, if not never, discussed as playing any part in the sustainability of a design object, even though it is the most impactful one, and even though aesthetics are our raw material, really. So there are a few layers of action when it comes to sustainability that we can engage with as designers, and as part of this research, I've designed a model that summarizes them. And the first is the symbolic level. So this is the example of a client asking for, I don't know, the light bulb made of grass. So at this level of action, my work speaks about sustainability. It's meant to point at the problem and say, hey, look here, this is important. It's about increasing awareness, but does not achieve really any structural change. And to work, it has to speak through what people already recognize as connected with sustainability, like emissions or the melting ice, but it does not go any further than that. The second level is the material one, the one we are all most familiar with. This is the case of the sustainable website that I just showed you, or the book made with recycled paper. Here I make choices in terms of what is considered good for the planet. So I care about material aspects, for example, paper, printing, or energy use, and I can definitely affect behaviors through that, although these might remain invisible to who experiences the design. And that's why we need, for example, stamps that tells me that this book is made with paper that is recycled, or statements that explain our website is sustainable, and so on. Unless I explain it and make it clear, it's not visible to the user. And the third layer is the structural one. And here I act holistically. So I don't care about just making a statement or pointing at the problem or reducing the use of resources, but my form, the way my design looks and perform also becomes part of the solution. So I take decisions so that each part of the design challenges existing systems to some extent and makes a counter proposal. This is very important. So this includes working with transformative and new form. I have a multi-environment approach and I generate, at this point, structural change. So of these layers, this last is actually the most effective one. So I hope that you can see that we are looking at sustainability also with the talks that preceded me, primarily as a matter of making space for another way. So the question becomes, what do we make space for? With our work, we always propose something. You know, I choose red over white. I choose a picture of this person over that person. We always create space for something. So the question becomes, what do we make space for? And I would like you to reflect on what is your proposition. I suggest if you're interested in bringing about a more sustainable world, that this should be the central question of your practice moving forward. If you want to know how it went with the business card from the beginning, you can check the text, The Color of Green, published for free and open on my Medium account. And also the text published on AGAI on Design, What is Visual Sustainability, from their national conference in 2020, where I participated. And it was recently republished in their new book, What It Means to Be a Designer Today, published just a few months ago. And I will also leave you with the suggestion to check out the work of Lance Hosey, who unfortunately passed away way too early, but he was doing he was looking into a very similar theme as I do, but from the lens of architecture, with his book, The Shape of Green. Great reading. Thanks, everybody. That was it from me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. The three of you have presented completely different ideas, but within the same theme, which is really remarkable. To those who are here watching, do you have any questions for our speakers? We have 20 minutes. Very unusual. The three of you did such a perfect job of being just 10 minutes in length. So impressive. While we're waiting for any questions, please put them in the chat, and we can get to those. From UX and considering life-centered design, non-human personas, that's sort of reframing kind of a power structure that exists that Benedetta was talking about. Kaylyn, you've got a business, you've got a community. You've proven that your business in industrial design is rethinking the way it manufactures, the way it actually thinks about manufacturing now with new calculators that you've created. And Benedetta, you're teaching, you have your own studio. Even the idea of putting aesthetic and sustainability together, I follow you on Instagram because I'm fascinated about how this all works, because you've kind of brought something up that maybe we all didn't think about in different format. Do the three of you have, while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, sometimes questions don't come. Do either of you have questions of one another? Because there's some interesting crossovers here.
I would have a question for Taylor, actually, if it's okay. Thank you for your presentation. It was lovely. And yeah, I am fascinated by the way you work with these non-human personas. And I was wondering, since you have to build a persona, of course, from your perspective of a natural element that cannot speak for itself, I was wondering, how do you address, the inevitable bias of the human gaze when building a non-human persona? I think it's a big dilemma that I would have.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a great question. And I think kind of when starting in this practice, the ideas and thoughts were in that perspective. So it was what I think water would want from a human lens. So I really had to step back and think okay, water is this powerful force. Water exists for, all of these different reasons. It might not exist, for me personally, and try to just take that thinking out of it. So it does take work, I think, to try to change your thinking when you are considering something that doesn't have a voice and giving it a voice and trying to not, put that perspective on it. So yeah, I think it's something that just takes work. It takes like re-examining. It takes like a team of people looking at it as well. So not just one person working on it, but getting perspectives from all different fields. It includes research as well. And yeah, that helps.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
we met Taylor through a colleague of ours, Jaron Spolstra in Spain, and he and his partner Marcy run a life-centered design school in the Pyrenees. So very inspiring stuff happening there. I mean, the climate designers community is really powerful, Kaylyn. We have to thank you for even putting your time and effort into it. It feels like you're getting a lot out of it. Do you feel like there's a movement happening within the design community? There's a desire, but are people able to implement change in their work, do you think?
I think there's lots of, yes, a couple questions there. I think there's lots of interest. I mean, and like I said, I've been reinvigorated every time we have an event. There's people that come out, or within the climate designers community, just getting to know other chapter leaders and be part of different committees. And when there's lots of heavy news, we were talking about before we got started, right? There's lots of heavy news and it's easy to feel discouraged, but then when you're with like-minded folks and you're learning and kind of looking at new directions that you can point yourself in, I think that's, for a lot of us, what keeps you going. As far as whether there's interest, I think there's lots of interest in everybody I talk to about applying that in their own work. I don't know that I've ever had somebody say they don't want to apply it in their own work. It's more of a question of how, which is why, at least for me, I think asking some questions about what you're doing, like those ones that I tried to share, is a great starting point. And everybody has a voice. Everybody has the ability to raise questions, be the squeaky wheel within their organization, and ask a question that maybe hasn't been asked. Even if it's not going to go in that direction, you can ask the question and see where it leads.
Excellent. Okay, after we asked you that question, now there's a flurry of questions. So some we can answer just on the side here, but there's lots of interest in non-human personas because it is a different way of thinking. Such as, how do you begin building non-human personas? How do you decide which, you can probably see the questions here too, which non-human persona to choose? And there's another one, can Taylor describe how the water persona was used and what specific insights came from it? So maybe we could tackle those two, and then we have one for Benedetta.
Yeah, thanks. Very good question. So in my process, the way that we started to go about building these non-human personas was to have a big team, a big team brainstorming session. And so with that, we went over kind of like, what is life-centered design? Like, what does this mean? How can we start thinking in this kind of lens? And then this was broken into several different aspects, like life, natural resources, our own environment, our own communities. And so we just started brainstorming, like, what communities am I personally a part of? What communities are our team members a part of? What community are we a part of in the work that we do? And then expanding that, what natural resources do we impact or touch in some way? And it can be as small as, you individually, like with, let's say, your commute to work, all the way to, large, like, where are the servers stored for the product you work on? So it really just starts there and start mapping and thinking and working together. And the way that we ultimately decided to choose water. So without explaining too much, we have like a couple different users for this Planet 4 product. We have back-end users, front-end users, and then we have our non-human. So we wanted to separate this into users that would fall into these categories, and we looked at where would the most like impact be, and we did this on kind of a rating scale with the team. So we actually also created a non-native English speaker persona and a youth persona. So this can also be applied community-wise as well. But yeah, lots of brainstorming, lots of thinking, lots of collaboration, and then looking at what kind of impact would this have or could this have if we started using this and changing what we do with their perspective. Hope that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For Benedetta, what kind of exercises did you do with your students so they could see how capitalism and patriarchy, etc., from your slides, affects aesthetics? So what kind of exercises did you go through? You kind of demonstrated that in your slides, but
yeah, so the course that I gave is not focused on having a long period of time talking about structures of power, because it's focused on practice. So the students have an assignment, but at the beginning we go through a long introduction. The talk that you saw today is normally 1.5 hours long instead of 10 minutes. And this exercise that I showed to you is a guided session where we take about a couple of hours together. I must say that I don't need to struggle for the students to understand these connections, because I find that the new generation is painfully aware of the connections between these three structures. And of course, if they have any doubts or wonder something, we discuss it together. But we try to see more like how each of these structures affects certain things, rather than talking about the intersections between them, because that would open also a much bigger chapter. This is at bachelor level, at the 3rd year. The master program in the same school in visual communication is entirely about power. So they have a 6 months introduction when it comes to structures of powers and how they intersect and how to translate that sensitivity into design practice. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
absolutely. Thank you. Kaylyn, you have a couple, I'm not sure if you're looking at the questions, there's a couple on determining materials, and without going into all the details of using your calculator, finding the best solution, which may be available, not be available. How do you decide on using bamboo versus other materials and the footprint of those? And I think there was another one here that spoke to making those decisions, especially when you consider shipping and the other metrics that are involved in moving materials around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. It's one that we talk about pretty regularly here still, and our own approach to those decisions has changed over, I would say, even 5 years' time. When we started really deciding to focus on reducing our product footprint, because as a manufacturer, that's our biggest impact. And we've been around for 35 years. We really wanted to clean up our act. Our immediate focus was on carbon footprint. And that is a pretty narrow lens, but we focused there first because we knew that it was almost like low-hanging fruit, that we could make some immediate changes and at least in this one metric improve our products. As we've done that, though, our attention has shifted to look at more of a total ecological footprint, which then with bamboo gets into other questions. It's not a perfect material. We could have monocropping of bamboo happening, and that's not great either. Which is why I mentioned we're now kind of pursuing development of our own material from waste, because my own kind of view and the discussions we've had here is what's responsible in a product if it's made from any virgin material, whether it's rapidly renewable or not, and how do we, if we want to make products that, quite honestly, a teacher doesn't need our product, right? To teach, a really good teacher doesn't need a classroom easel. So if we want to make that and there's a desire for that and it's a want, can we make it out of a waste material that otherwise would be just ending up in a landfill? So that's a long road for us in developing that, but it's kind of how we've shifted our view of certain materials, and it's not perfect and we're not going to be able to solve it all. Those are difficult discussions about where we're making a product. We have a facility here in Ontario where we make some goods, and we do source some from China as well. And again, it's kind of this push and pull always of where makes most sense to make this, and a whole variety of considerations.
Great. Because life cycle comes up quite a bit too, right? Especially from the circular product and design point of perspective. There's lots of questions here. I'm not sure if there are any that you want to answer, because I know you can see them. Benedetta, there's one on focusing on talking about production processes rather than just design modifications. says here, as a seasoned designer, could you share your strategies for collaborating with stakeholders, clients, and decision makers when reviewing and improving product development processes, specifically in visual and digital design?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
Can you repeat it?
Could you share your strategies for collaborating with stakeholders and decision makers when reviewing and improving product development processes, specifically in visual and digital? This person appreciated your focus on production processes rather than just design modifications.
I don't know what design modifications means, but the way we usually work is that we establish a dialogue with our clients, and I think the example of the business card that I made at the beginning is one example. Like, clients come with some sort of ideas, some good, some less good. Most of them based on what they think is sustainable or what they've heard is sustainable or how they think we should perform in order to be sustainable. And I am a strong advocate for designers to have counter arguments. We have to be able to go into the room and act as consultants and not as executors of whatever idea might already be present in the room. Through the expertise that we have in terms of the supply chain of how design is created, our expertise in terms of material, and our expertise in terms of impact. I don't have one answer that can, just cover this question, because obviously it depends on the case. But my approach is to always pause and train the client to think holistically. And you will have different people in the room that have different priorities. And it's very, very important that each time we take the time to have a serious discussion. At the Stockholm Environment Institute, we also published a booklet which had extremely high number of copies. I believe it was about 2 million of copies. And there we had to do a huge research in order to make sure that that production could be sustainable, and you find the person that says, oh, let's just do it locally so we don't have to source the paper from anywhere else, or the person that will have other priorities. And my role, our role as consultants, is always to try to bring these perspectives together, apply an intersectional lens so that we understand what happens there when I pull over here and take a decision each time. That's my approach. And you need to meet up with clients that are serious about sustainability and that are willing to put the extra time and effort that it takes to find answers that make sense, that are not just a green stamp on your product.
Okay, thank you. Here's one for Taylor, because Taylor has to leave shortly. And I love this one because it's from someone in New Zealand who is interested in bringing more of a overt LCD lens to their work. And this applies to everyone, I believe. So far, talking to potential clients, my sense is there is no appetite for going this deep and wide. Businesses are interested in waste management, for example, but nothing more. Any thoughts on making this leap? I think this applies to everyone, truthfully. I think it's trying to convince others, whether they be clients or organizations, government, policymakers, that this is an important step. Anyway, that's your question, Taylor.
Great. Thank you for the question. Yeah, this is a great question. I think in my case, I've worked with companies like Greenpeace International, who are already doing a lot of this work. So it's not hard to, convince like a different way of thinking and how we actually do the design when the work is what, kind of aligns with all of this as well. But I definitely see, if it's a client that isn't doing this kind of work, how do you bring this in? I think things are changing. I feel like the landscape is changing. I hope that is the case. And I think one way is just talking to people and sharing this kind of idea. So I've shared this water persona with people from all different fields. And the response I've gotten every time is like, wow, I would have never even thought of that. So maybe that's a way, is just to start having those discussions and showing what kind of impact this can have, and just start hopefully helping other people change their opinions. But I don't have the best answer for that, just because that hasn't been my experience. But I think that's what I would say.
And thanks for logging in from New Zealand. Kaylyn, do you have any thoughts? Like similarly, in your business, it's part of your business model, right? So it's not a big shift, perhaps, for you. Do you want to? Could you expand on that? If there's anything that what you had to overcome, any barriers in convincing clients that this is a path forward?
My most honest answer there is I think a lot of our clients don't actually care. They are not making the decision to choose a more sustainable product. They are choosing our product because they like the brand or our warranty. They know us from years ago. They've had an easel for 30 years and they know it's going to last. And making the more sustainable choice is like maybe last on the list. We've often bet and talked about it should be higher, especially for education, and you're using public money, and shouldn't there be this like expectation that you spend that money wisely? And we hope that one day that will be the chance, that's the way that it is. But right now, when we're selling, it's kind of like if all else is equal and this, then maybe that'll sway people, but it's not the reason necessarily people choose us. We've had a few instances where people have. We won our first bid because we were a B Corp, but that was after years of being a B Corp, and it's only happened once. And
Yeah.
I hope it'll happen more. We sell through resellers. Our resellers like it. It's a good story, but I don't think it's why they work with us. So we're doing it because we know and feel like it's right, and that's the way businesses should move. And we just hope eventually that will become a requirement, and we'll be ahead of the game then.
Excellent. All right, any closing words? We have just 1 minute left. Do either of you want to say something to our audience? You've said a lot, so don't feel compelled to say anything more.
Thank you for arranging this. To you, yeah.
Well, thank you for being
and your
here,
team.
for everyone being. This is I think there's in the comments, it's just you have such varied approaches, and I think that's really important to talk about sustainable design. So if we can continue this conversation again somehow, somewhere, that would be great. And if others can learn how to take action, it might be joining climate designers, for instance, then that's great too. We will share a recording of this. We will have a blog post that shares some of the learnings for everyone. That'll be sent out in a couple weeks' time if you signed up. And I will just close with a few things. Taylor, I know you have to leave, so feel free to leave. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all.
And just thank yous to Benedetta, Taylor, and Kaylyn for sharing your perspectives today and your experience and personal stories and actions that you are embedding in your practices and teachings. Our next event, we don't have any more events for this year, but our next event will be Cafe Conversations here in Toronto at Ethica Coffee Shop. And it's with Leslie Ann Noel, who is the Dean of Design at OCAD-U. And we are looking for new ideas and new topics. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas. And we look forward to seeing everyone in 2025. Try to stay positive. I know these are very complex times that we're living through. Designers, creative people, we have a great role to play. And let's use our strengths to shed, the light on new ways of working and sustainable approaches and equity and all important things that are part of our thinking and things that you've shared today. So thank you to everyone for being here. Have a great Wednesday. Thanks all.
You too. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.